I don't think so.
Marshall.
Mics are live. Okay, I've got people waiting. Where's that at?
I don't know, Richie, where's your dunk tank?
Excuse me.
Did he write that?
We're going to start this 4:32 meeting. Which, if you would, follow along with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Fenton. Here. Denham. Here. Cooper.
Here.
Milton. Here. Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And our item on the agenda is, we're going to get a presentation from Richard Sheets about, he's the director of the Missouri Municipal League. Richard, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for traveling down here and sharing your time with us.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, this is a very important topic, and we are all ears.
Okay. Again, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Aldermen, thanks for inviting me down. This is an important topic, just something that is available to the city of Branson because your population is 5,000 and over. And, first, I'm not here to advocate for the charter form of government. That's your decision. That's your voters' decision. I'm just here to educate. It's an option that you have available to you, and you may find it something you want to take advantage or not. That's really your local decision. Because I just have to make a little plug for the Missouri Municipal League. Our mission is local control. So we want you all need to make those kind of decisions and keep them local and not in Jefferson City.
Thank you.
That's my plug. So just kind of outline what is a charter city. I think we first have to look at what forms of government or what classification cities have now. Currently Branson is a fourth-class city and has been a fourth-class city or equivalent since 1912. So it's been a long time as a statutory city. So statutory cities are like Branson. They're fourth-class cities governed by Chapter 79. There's Monette, they're a third-class, and Aurora, they're third-class cities and governed by Chapter 77. And then there's villages, probably like Marion Wood, they're villages, and they're governed by Chapter 80. And what that means is they're governed by the General Assembly of the state of Missouri. How they structure their government is in statute. So why you have a board of aldermen, why you have the number of aldermen you do, why you have the various procedures that you have, is because the state laws said this is how you operate your city in Branson, because you're a fourth-class city. Charter cities take you away from that just a little bit. Instead of being based in statute, it's based in constitution. And essentially, you can look at it that a charter city develops their own constitution, essentially. They develop their own charter that creates their form of government, how they want their structure of government what their structure of government looks like. Statutory cities are really a few options. And when you do want to change something in your form of government, gets authorization to do something that's not in statute, you have to go to Jeff City, lobby 164 House members, 34 senators, and a bunch of lobbyists with a special interest to get that through. And then you also, that change applies to all fourth-class cities. So Branson is unique. There's some things that you may want to do that other fourth-class cities may not want to do, so you don't get that broad support. So it just gives you that real flexibility in your structure and some of the powers that you might have. The Home Rule Charter has been around a long time. It's been around since about 1875. The legislature or the Constitution was changed to grant Kansas City with the structure of allowing them to go to a charter form of government. But it's real clumsy. You had to be detailed. Their charter was probably pages and pages of thickness. But in 1971, the voters of this state amended the Constitution to allow any city 5,000 and greater to select to go to a home rule charter. And it also made the big change. once you become a charter city, you can do anything any other city in the state can do. So once you become a charter city, you have all the powers that a third-class city has, a fourth-class city has, and a village. You have all those powers inherent. And then you have those structures that your voters create in your charter. And so, and what does that mean? Right now, as I mentioned earlier, you need to go to the state capitol to get permission. As a charter city, charter cities can do anything that's not prohibited or preempted by the General Assembly. Good example is a sales tax. The state legislature has preempted the field of sales tax. So they prescribe what sales taxes cities can enact. So you could not, enact a new sales tax. But a good example is a hotel motel tax. Hotel motel tax is not preempted. Just like Springfield, they're looking at another hotel motel tax to build a convention center. They can do that. They can do that by just the vote of the people because they're a charter city, and that power or that authority has not been preempted or taken by our state legislature. That's just one example. So the charters now, there's 42 cities in the state of Missouri that have a charter. That's out of the 140 cities that are eligible to have a charter. There's 140 cities with 5,000 population or over. So 30% of that number of those cities have a city charter. The last city that enacted a charter is a neighbor to your east, and that's West Plains. West Plains enacted their charter in 2013. So you can see by the length of time, it's something that's really not, cities over 5,000 just don't automatically go to a charter city. It takes time for that to be thought about and determined if that's something to look at. And I always thought about why that's not, why that's the case. And, I think it's the case where, change is not easy. I mean, you've been a fourth-class city since 1912. So, and it's worked well. I mean, it's something that some cities just don't want to change, and they're comfortable where they're at, and are not looking at charters. But then there's cities like Nixa and Republic, West Plains, certainly went to a charter and found that attractive and formed a pretty good charter. And what's really better with the charter now since 1971, it's not a big, thick document. You don't have to get into the weeds like you used to. So makes it a more attractive process. So you look at a charter, I said change is difficult, but also, charters, many charters keep the status quo. You don't see a lot of cities when they go to a charter form of government really change drastically their structure. So I'm looking at cities with city administrator forms of government. They typically keep that city administrator form of government, but they clarify the roles, because that's probably the biggest problem with our statute when it comes to, let's say, city administrator form of government. It's a paragraph long. There's no clarity there. So the charter, you can clarify that to meet your needs and how you want that position to operate within your structure. So it gives you those kind of, and that's just one example. I think any of you that worked with state statutes know how it's vague, and two people can have different interpretations for the same section. And that's not, neither are really wrong. It's just how you read that, because it's their, how the process works in Jefferson City, because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so things get little changed up there that sometimes is not real clear. Clarity is probably one of the things that really a charter does for many cities. Clarifies roles, but that doesn't preclude you from making major changes. So is there any questions just general about the charter, just before I go into the process, because that's what we're kind of looking at, but I want to kind of answer some questions you might have on the charter and some of the...
Can you repeat again how many charter cities there are and how many are available?
There's
Or that are qualified to.
Right. There's 140 cities that are qualified for a charter form of government. That's all cities 5,000 and above. And there's 42 cities that currently have a charter form of government.
Why do you think, so you're looking at almost 100 that qualify but have chosen.
Yeah, there's 30% have a charter.
That have chose not to. Why do you think that?
Well, I think it goes back to that we're comfortable where we are. I mean, I'm looking at the city of Moberly. They're a third-class city. They've been a third-class city a long time. They probably have a 12,000 population, similar to your off-season population. And quite honestly, the city council and the citizens have never brought that up because that's where it's initiated. It's commonly initiated by the city council. I mean, that's who really typically initiates the charter, brings that discussion to the forefront. Sometimes it is brought up by citizen groups, and that's happened on occasions. And I'll talk about the process, how that's initiated. But I think they're just comfortable with their position. I mean, we certainly, we have information on forms of government, and we do our elected officials training every year and have information on our website. So the information is out there. I just think that's something that they don't feel that they need at this time.
Something that I would be concerned about is what kind of control or power would that lay in the hands of the people that sit in these positions? Because right now, I'm comfortable with the decisions and
Sure.
the route that we're all on and our mindset and our focus for the city, but we're not going to be here forever.
Right.
And that's the one thing that might concern me is we're all gone, and then you got some yahoos up here that's making decisions that you're not afraid,
I get
you know what I
that.
mean?
Yeah, so that's going to be up to your voters. And really what the charter is going to do is not really, you're still going to maybe get folks that aren't qualified or shouldn't be up. That's a voter's decision. But it's going to talk about, right now you have six council board members and one mayor. Well, you may want to have a bigger council. You may want to have a smaller council. So those are kind of structures that you can put in the charter. The citizens can vote in a charter. They can put in some limited age qualifications. You got to be careful about age, but there's, the statutes have an age qualification. You could, tweak that a little bit, either downwards a little, probably if you were going to do that. So it won't prevent who will get elected if it's just put the structure on how many and the powers of the
Of
duties.
that position?
Yeah, I mean, so the legislative body, the Board of Aldermen, will always have those legislative duties, but the charter could form certain committees to make it in the charter. Right now, there's only committees you have, council committees you have, are the ones that you all create. And the charter could form standing commissions, those type of things. But
I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I'd hate to see us change something like this, and then we're all gone, and we get somebody up here with a control issue, and all of a sudden, you got a dictator running the city of Branson.
Well, and that's important because you want to keep the separate branches of government, the checks and balances, the executive branch and the legislative branch, and of course the judicial branch. You certainly want to, keep that structure. I've been with the league a long time, and I've seen a lot of these charters. I've never seen a charter being proposed that changes that basic structure. Now, I've seen charter initiatives that got extremely controversial because you had different groups wanting different things, and it got very controversial. And typically, that's probably the death nail of a charter. Those haven't passed.
And I'm not saying I would be against it.
No, I get it.
These
No,
are the important
no.
questions that was in my mind right off,
Absolutely.
because there are good things. I mean,
Yeah.
I've read
Well,
up.
I think that really the answer is, this is about the structure. It's the quality of who's elected, that's in the hands
Yeah.
of your voters. That's going to remain in the hands of your voters.
And I understand
Yeah,
that,
and
but
so-
would it give them more liberty and
Well,
power
it depends. It depends how the structure is. If you want a bigger council or you want a smaller council, that's probably the biggest question you would have.
Yeah.
Is what size of council do you want?
Sir,
I mean,
would a good example maybe also be like what powers the Planning and Zoning Commission could have? For instance, could a charter say that a planning and zoning commission in a city was prescriptive as opposed to, is that something that could change?
I don't believe that would happen. It can't happen because that area has been preempted by the state legislature because we have Chapter 89 that defines the duties of how planning is initiated, the roles of it, and how the legislative body must make that final decision. So that's in state statute, and you still have to follow those statutes, still have to follow the open meetings law, still have to follow the budget law, many, I mean, you still, it takes you out of the thumb of some way from the General Assembly, but not all the way. They still have a lot of control over local government and many factions or factors.
So, Richard, I agree with Clay's question, and that's very thoughtful coming from. So I agree with Clay's concerns, but when I started checking into this a year ago, I kept hearing a lot of the positives, and so one thing I'm interested in is hearing what the negatives are. But in Clay's example, one of the things I was very interested in is, my understanding is with a charter city, it gives our residents the right to petition.
It could. So right now, Branson is a fourth-class city, and there's no initiative petition process.
Right.
That's something that can be written in the charter, and I can say, without any exception, every city that has a charter has an initiative petition process in it. So it does allow all the 42 charters, and you might find one that doesn't, but I'm pretty sure all of them have initiative petitions where citizens can petition the council or board of aldermen to put a measure on the ballot to have the voters decide.
That would also include, I believe, that the residents would also have the ability to petition to remove a particular.
Recall. That's called recall.
Recall.
Yes, recall.
So in Clay's example, if there does become some.
And again, that has to be written into the charter.
Sure,
It's not automatic, but it's a common provision in charters. Because what it really does, it does put more control with the voters. Because right now, if they say, boy, we have too many council members, or we don't have enough, or something. I mean, I'm just making this as an example. They can come up and sign a petition and put it on the ballot and change their structure of government.
Well,
it really
or remove a particular alderman or
they
mayor.
can go, if it's in the charter. If it's in the charter, yes,
Yeah,
it could.
because today they can't. They have to
cannot.
wait till the next election cycle. So I saw that as a positive, providing the voters more control.
And I do like the way you worded that. It gives the citizens, the
It does.
voters, more power.
It does.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
One thing that I've been thinking about, it's to Clay's point in a lot of ways, is, right now, there is so much power in the city administrator role, and that's an unelected official. And to me, that's much more dangerous of that kind of going off the rails and becoming not what the citizens want than a direct vote of where the citizens are.
Any examples you want to share? If we can, go ahead.
I just have one. Well, I have one question. Since charter would need to go to vote,
Say it again, I'm sorry?
if the charter needs to
Yes,
go
yes.
for vote, after the charter is established, what's the process for amending the charter?
I was going to go into that process.
Yeah.
We go into the
Okay.
process, but if you don't mind,
Cody, you have a
wait.
question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the mayor already kind of asked it, but before we get into the process, I'm curious too, I mean, in the 42 cities that have this form of government, are there any negatives? Are there any downsides? Is there anything you guys have seen where you thought, man, they kind of did that, man, maybe this isn't the best?
I'll be perfectly honest, I have not, because when a problem does arise, it's easily corrected. Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but if the charter has to be amended, that change could be initiated by the city council or by a petition from the voters. So it's pretty easy to get, oh my gosh, this is not working. We need to fix this. So it's easy to fix those type of problems that arise, where right now, there's a lot of problems with our statutes because it's just been piecemeal together over the years, and so that's where that presents more of a problem. And to answer your question about the city administrator, that's a really good example, because one of the problems, I believe, with the city administrator form of government in Missouri is the position is not well defined. You have no direction. So certainly you need administrative individuals to do work, but what is there do? It's unless you have a really strong ordinance, sometimes that stuff is not real clear, and you do get conflict. That's the biggest conflict I see around the state, and charters tend to fix that because what the charter does, it clarifies those roles with the mayor, the council, the city administrator. If you would decide to have a city administrator, there's the city of Florissant. They have a charter that's probably dates back in the 70s, but they have a full-time mayor. But most of them have gone to a city administrator. Some have a city manager because they, like Springfield, because they had a city manager. They kept that form of government. But
So, sir, to that point,
yeah,
so I just Googled cities in Missouri, and it's
Okay.
going to come up with the major ones that we've heard of. You know, St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, Jeff City, Columbia. Can you think of any glaring examples of the ones that we would all know that haven't gone charter?
yeah, St. Peters, Missouri. They're a fourth-class city, and in St. Charles County, they probably have 70,000 people, and they're still a fourth-class city. I spoke to the council there, the board of aldermen there, and some citizen groups probably 15 years ago about the same topic, and they said, we like it. We like being a big, at that time, they're the largest fourth-class city in the state of Missouri, and it was kind of a badge of honor. Because now Blue Springs, we're kind of competing with that. Now Blue Springs is a charter form of government, I believe. Blue Springs. So St. Peters is the largest fourth-class city in the state of Missouri, and they wear it as a badge of honor. So that's
So
fine.
most of the major notable cities
Yes,
have gone this way.
they have. Well, yes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have, absolutely. And I certainly encourage you to talk to West Plains city officials and Nixa and Republic and because those about your side, Joplin's and Kansas City's and Springfield's, that's really a little bit different. I mean, they have a charter, but I think the Nixas and the West Plains are really someone you would want to look towards or even have questions with.
Richard, were you involved with the West Plains or Nixa?
Well, I was involved in the Nixa charter. And so what I did after I went and we made this presentation, then occasionally I came down and met with the charter commission and we talked over different provisions because you have a lot of decisions to make and you have a short time to do it. And so you have a lot of options. And so I helped them through that process. And we'll be willing to help you. I mean, well, that's down the road,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just was curious, what's the difference between, you said Monette, I think, was a third-class city?
Monette?
What,
yeah.
you said a city, what's the difference between fourth class
Did I
and
say,
third
I
class?
think I said Monette has a charter, but I don't know.
Or maybe Moberly?
No, Monette's a third-class city, yes. That's why I said Monette and Aurora are third-class cities.
What's the difference between third and fourth class, and how does
Well,
one?
what's the difference? Fourth-class cities like Branson operate under Chapter 79. So you're a board of aldermen, you can have a mayor council form of government, you can have a mayor administrative form of government. Now, a third-class city operates under Chapter 77, and they could have a mayor council form of government, a city administrative form of government, they could have a city manager form of government, like, I think Aurora still has a city manager. They might have got rid of it. Yeah, but city manager form of government is what's called the weak mayor form of the government. It's like what Springfield has and Joplin, where they have an elected city manager who is the chief executive officer of the city, and the mayor is a member of the council and just a ceremonial head of the city. The chief executive is an appointed person by the council. That's the difference. And I can say that not many, I can't think of a city that has gone to that form of government since I've been with the league. In 1981 is when I came with the league, and cities have gone to a city administrator form of government. It's kind of a mix.
So if he,
But there's very few change. There's not then structure. There's really not a lot of change between between third and fourth class cities. They've grown close together. There used to be a lot of changes. A lot of things have just been deleted, and they're very similar.
So if you were a charter city and you chose not to have a city administrator, does those duties then fall to the mayor, or it depends on how you structure it?
Well, it probably have to follow, but you need to have an executive officer. You could have a form of government that used to be the form of government of Monette and Aurora. They've done away with it. It's called the commission form of government, where there's 3 commissioners elected, and they're both the legislative body and the executive body. Each commissioner has a executive department under them, but they also serve in almost like very similar to the county commission in some way, because the county commissions are both executives and the legislative body of the county. So, but that, again, the 2 cities that were operating under that form abandoned that a number of years ago. I think, but that's an option.
So if this transition was taken on, what would be the one thing that the residents of Branson would notice? What would be their biggest win in transitioning from a 4th class to a charter city?
Well, that's a good question. Probably right away, they may not, if the charter did not make drastic changes in the number of the council seats or make any drastic changes in the structure, they probably wouldn't see a lot of changes, to be quite honest.
Just that ability to petition and probably have a little more
say. They have more say in their structure of government.
Okay, perfect.
It just gives them a more control.
Did you hear that, Clay? That was a good question.
Yeah, I'm proud of you, buddy. Thanks for studying.
Now, the process, I would just give you the one horror story of a charter process. And that happened in the city. I'm not going to mention any names because I represent them also. It's the city of St. Louis County. And the process wasn't initiated by the council or it was initiated by one group of the city had a special interest. And it tore that city apart. So I don't think that city will ever have a charter. It went south real fast because it wasn't a charter that was looking at the city as a whole. It was a special interest-driven council. So that is probably the biggest danger of a charter is special interests inserting themselves into the process. And that could be the death nail to the charter or the development of a poor charter. So that's something I think you have to be aware of. It hasn't happened often, but it has happened.
You'll help avoid us from doing that.
I'll do what I can. So if you want to, I'll go into process. I know you have a meeting afterwards. And you have a handout that I gave Lisa, and it's just the process of how you create or draft or initiate and draft a charter. And then here's the constitutional provision that says everything that I'm going to say, but in the constitutional terms. But that's your authority right there. Again, any city over 5,000 or 5,000 over can initiate a charter. And the process can be initiated by the Board of Aldermen, the governing body, or the citizens of the city. The citizens, the board would do that by ordinance, creating this, putting this on the ballot. The citizens would submit a petition of 10% of the voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election to the council saying, we want you to put this on the ballot, and you would have to put that on the ballot. Now here's the little difference about the charter. So it's you put the question on the ballot. Shall a commission be chosen to frame a charter? But that's not the complete ballot wording. Also, at the same time you're asking the voters to approve this process to start, you're also electing the 13 charter commission members. So it would be, shall we proceed with the charter? And then you have all these names here. Who do you want to be on the charter commission? And all the names that have submitted their individuals who submitted their name to be on the charter committee are listed. It could be 40 people, but you have to have 13. And so the 13 who receive the most votes become your charter commissioners. And they have 1 year after that election to present a charter at that next election. But it says a year, but they don't have a year. They have 8 months because you have to have that charter ready and submit that to the county clerk to get it on the ballot. So they have 8 months to have a charter. And that's a short time period. So it's a lot of work for that charter committee. And so a question I had, I don't know who asked me this question once, was what happens if you don't get 13 people to sign up? Well, first of all, I've never seen that. Usually it's more than that. But if there is if you only have 12 that really sign up, what would happen to be a vacancy. This talks about how you appoint vacancies when a current charter member vacates, the commission appoints somebody. So what it would be, it'd be a vacancy, and they would appoint that. But that would probably not happen. Haven't seen, I can't recall any situation where they didn't have enough commission members. But so on the same ballot, you have asking the voters, shall we proceed with the charter, and who do you want to be on that charter commission?
What if that passes and then the charter fails?
Well, the charter's not being considered. All this is, I said, can we proceed?
But then a year later, the citizens vote on the charter,
And
and then we revert back to a fourth-class city?
But you're a fourth-class city till you adopt that charter. So let's say you go through that work and the citizens reject it, then you're still a fourth-class city. They don't want to be a charter. Absolutely, yeah. And you'll become, I'm not sure, technically you may be a charter city, but it'll be the next election till you implement that charter because you have elected folks on the seats, and that's when you elect your new city council, board of aldermen, whatever you want to call it. So the next April election is really when that would become implemented.
So Richard, just for some clarity, what's the process of obtaining those 13 charter committee members?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, you go to the public, you announce, people submit their names, their names then would go on the ballot to be chosen?
And council members, a board of aldermen members can be on that council. There's no prohibition on being a current city official.
So there could be a list of 20 names.
Correct.
On the ballot, and the top 13 win.
Oh, that's correct.
Okay?
And,
Go ahead.
that's fine, I'm fine.
Okay. So just as a different type of scenario, because we do have a pretty unique city here, could, if we went to a charter, could it be similar to like packing, how they, the Supreme Court, how they pack they say they're packing the court. So could it be similar at a smaller level, packing the city council? I mean, that could be a worst-case scenario, something in the line of what Clay was saying.
I'm not sure I understand.
Let's say Ward 3 tried to get 4 aldermen or something like that. Have you ever seen anything like trying to?
Well, one thing we still have, we still have the U.S. Constitution, one person, one vote. So, you couldn't have one ward with more representation than the third ward. That would be unconstitutional. That would be, you can't do that. So we would have to have, you have to have equal representation. So you would have, if you want to have 30 wards, I mean, that's up to you. But you said have equal, one person per ward or 2 persons per ward. You couldn't have one ward with a different number of representatives. I mean, you could go at large too. I mean, you could go at large and do it like Springfield and Columbia. So Columbia, they have ward council members, and they're elected wards. Then they have the mayor, who is really a council member, but the mayor is the at-large council seat. That's really what that seat is. You read their constitution or their charter. The mayor of Columbia is really the at-large council member. But I can tell you from living in mid-Missouri, the office, because it's the political leader of the city, they still have a lot of authority just by presenting issues to the public. They're the focal point.
Okay. So, and then just after listening to you, more questions. I guess the main question would be, what problem are we going to be solving by going to a charter versus?
I can't answer that. I mean, you are a very unique city. I mean, And so there's an issue. I was thinking, what's something unique that Branson could do that maybe a statutory city like yourself couldn't do now? I'm thinking about you have development, and my background is in land use planning. That many years ago, before I came to the league, my background was in planning, and a lot of the issue was about impact. How do we pay for roads and development in these newly annexed areas without burdening the whole population and maybe making the folks that are using that property and gaining from it pay for those developments. So impact fees are the concept. Have an impact fee where developers pay into an impact fee, and I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying that City of Lee Summit did this. They couldn't do that as a fourth-class city. They became a charter city, and they created an impact fee fund to pay for the roads and sewer in the area that was growing. So that's one area that you could have some more authority because the General Assembly didn't preempt that field, didn't say you could not have impact fees. They could come back later and say that, but they have not. So you can be creative, and I'm not saying I'm a great creative person, so I don't know what things you guys could come up with, but you.
Well, I'm curious. So we had, I think it was 2017, we had to go to Jeff City for the public safety tax.
Yes, right.
Is that something that if, as a charter city, that could have been done without having to get legislative approval or from the state?
Well, no, you still have to because the General Assembly has preempted the field of sales tax. But there is a way to increase your sales tax, earmark that to public safety without going to the General Assembly. Did that pass for you guys? Yeah. You didn't really have to do that. I mean, you could. There's another way because cities have up to a 2-cent general sales tax authority. I don't know any city that has 2 cents. I think St. Joe and maybe one other city has 1.5 cents. So you could have gone to another 0.5 cent and earmarked it in ordinance and on the ballot, but you had to go to Jeff City. But yeah, that's just the way you could have done that. But that's water under the bridge. But no, that's been preempted by the legislature. Taxes are, I know you guys never hear anything about taxes. It's not a big issue anywhere, but it's sure a big issue in Jeff City, as you know, and in this country. So our General Assembly has really clamped down on the tax issues. They've taken, our position on that is, I can see, we're looking at giving you the authority to levy a sales tax. It's your voters voting in that sales tax. And the voters should have the ability to say what they want to use the sales tax for. Right now, it's so pigeonholed, transportation, capital improvement. We believe that the voters should have, if they're going to impose a tax on themselves after an election, they should determine what they want to use that money for. You shouldn't have to go to Jeff City and say, can we use this for public safety? That's a decision of your voters.
Richard, did you see any difference during COVID and the COVID response between the way charter cities handled it and what they were able to do versus the way fourth-class cities handled it?
No, only those cities like Columbia and maybe Springfield. But that's because, it might be related to their charter somewhat because their health department is more connected with the city. So they had more public health authority than most cities have. Most cities don't have a great public health, presence. It's going to be the Springfields and the larger cities. And in their charter, I know Springfield charter, they're involved. They have a relationship with the county. It's a joint county health department. And so and then Columbia, they have in their charter, they have a greater public health segment. In their fact, Jeff City's a city of 40,000. We have no health department. It's the county, so we didn't get involved in it. So we really didn't. It's just those few cities that have a health department presence.
If we can, there's going to be hundreds of questions. If we can, let's use this time to hear what Richard's prepared for the process. And I fully anticipate we will have more than our share of public meetings and ask and answer a lot of these questions. Maybe Richard could be available on Zoom. But because I know we're going to have, this is the very first introduction, and there's going to be what if and what if and what if, right? Which are all great questions. I do want to clarify two things that you said. There are, well, I'll stay away from that one.
Anything, shoot
Two
anything.
clear comments. One is, this mayor does not feel that the mayor should have more authority, because I know I'm going to hear that based on your comments. I believe that the value of a board is the true value versus a individual having too much authority. And I know we've talked about the taxes. I don't know I can speak for the whole board. I probably speak for the majority of the board. There's also no interest of raising taxes.
Oh, no, and actually, the charter really wouldn't go into taxes. I mean, except for, I mentioned the impact fee, that's really not, that's more a fee, but that was an example. But most of the tax issues are already set by almost all property tax, sales taxes, and many of your fees, TDDs, CIDs, all those special districts you can form are all set by statute. You really.
Yeah, I just wanted to get ahead of.
Yes, absolutely.
Hearing comments of, well, they want to do this so they can raise taxes, or they
Yeah.
want to do this so the mayor has
Yeah.
more authority, and both of those are false
Right,
statements.
right. Yeah, it's really, I mean, the basis is typically, you talk about, oh boy, the mayor wants more power, but what that says, and that's really the problem or the issue why cities go to a charter, is because positions are not clear. I challenge everyone in this audience and sit down and read chapter 79 sometime, and then come back and tell me exactly what your authority is. You're going to say, I'm not sure. I think this, but someone else thinks something else. And then there's not just that statute, then there's another statute. So it just clarifies, and if it isn't clear, you can come back and make it clear. That's really the real advantage of a charter, is the clarity in your form of government. And access your people have to that government, how to make those changes. It's not going to be a sweep. It's not going to be a magic bullet to keep Jeff City off your back. It just kind of, keeps them a little distance, gives you a little more breathing room. But we're still going to have to deal with special interest groups trying to reduce the voters' authority in various areas. And just to answer your question, one question about how the amendment, so I explained how the charter is created. You have the vote, so the Charter Commission has 8 months it has a year, but 8 months to craft that charter and present that to the citizens. And they can do two things. They can have one charter. Here is our model charter. This is our recommended charter. And the voters could say yes or no. But they can also have a charter with alternative provisions in there. They can say, here's our charter, but in this section we have an A and a B. We have another section, we have a C and a D. Do you like A and B? Do you like C? So it gives the voters can choose certain provisions where maybe the Charter Commission didn't have a clear direction, a clear what they wanted. They could have two different examples, and the voters could say, we like section B of the charter, not section A. So it gives some more discretion to the voters. So if the charter is adopted by the citizens of Branson, after the next election, it will all be implemented, and then you find out, we probably should have done something else, or this is not quite right, we need to fix that. Again, the council, the Board of Aldermen, or whatever you call it at that time, could be a city council then, could put that on the ballot and propose a change to that charter. Or the citizens can petition and say, we don't like this provision. We want this provision of the charter changed. And that happens quite a bit. I mean, there's, things change. Things are always changing, and what looks good today may not work tomorrow. And that's really that's what's wrong with our statutes now. I mean, it worked really well in 1934, but in 2022, it's not quite relevant.
So that changed by the citizens, is it still the same 10% of the voters have
Yes.
to get a petition and then it goes on the ballot?
10%. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Would the theater ticket tax be preemptive?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. That's, yeah.
I think, that because it's a tax.
It's a tax,
But there
yeah.
may be things we can do to help maybe clean up some issues that we currently have with ticket resellers saying a show's closed and things like that. I mean, I think there's things that we would be able to do that we as a community would want, that other cities would have little or no, other Class 4 cities would have little or no interest in, and that's one of the struggles we have getting things through Jeff City.
And you can look at those
big
unique
deal here.
areas.
Assuming this would pass and go, that next election, the charter would pass, does that mean every position is up for election at that same, or how does that work?
Well, it would, I would say yes, because you've changed form of governments, and now you have, you probably don't have the same number of council persons. The wards might change a little bit, so yeah, you would have to, everybody would be up. And there would probably be staggered terms, just like when you become a, you go from a fourth class to a third class, which no one ever does because no advantage. But if you did, you'd have to, someone would get elected. They all would get elected at the same time, but you'd have terms. So you have one for a 1-year term, one for a 2-year term. You still
So-
stagger that.
But Richard, if we weren't going to change the number or the form of government, they all wouldn't be up for election at the same time.
I would say maybe. I would, let me check on that one.
Okay.
You're changing form of government. I don't want to give you a definite answer on that.
Okay.
Let me just,
Fair enough.
let me just verify that one.
Richard, another question I have on the municipal election process,
Yes.
that changes?
Well, the state has preempted our local elections, now, I say that, I qualify that a little bit because Kansas City is a charter city. They have they're nonpartisan, like all cities in the state of Missouri now, since St. Louis changed, all cities are nonpartisan. And Kansas City's been a nonpartisan for many, many, many years. But they still have a primary. When there's more candidates for particular seats, they have a March runoff, and they still have that.
Is it petitioned yet, or have they gone away from that? Isn't Springfield,
I don't think Springfield, I'm not sure if that's.
they have a different election process. I didn't know if that was,
Well, there's a little bit, there are provisions made for some charter cities in Chapter 115, our election laws, that allow for those, I think it's mainly those primary elections that some charter cities have on their charter. Probably St. Louis, I would imagine. I know Kansas City. I'm not sure about Springfield. I didn't know they had it. They may have it.
then amendments to the charter. So we're used to, I call it cross out and underline, and changes to the code book. So there's a uniqueness that's not quite done that way in a charter, correct?
That's
Depending
correct.
on the chapter.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
so those changes are not what we would be used to seeing as a fourth-class city.
Correct. I mean, your city code's not going to change. You still have, those laws on your city code remain the same when you go to a charter. But
amendments to what we see as code now would be done differently for.
I don't think your code process would not change. No.
So if the board wanted to amend a chapter or language in the code, it does
same
not
process.
go back to the.
No, absolutely not. No, that's still, those are ordinances. Those are just codified ordinances, and that process remains the same.
And so
That's
the
it.
transition from fourth class to a charter, the change doesn't occur in the code book, so you wouldn't notice the changes.
No,
as-
the laws would not change.
Change.
The ordinances would not change unless you come back and change those. Right. It's again, mainly your structure. I think that's what you need. You need to look at structure. This is not, unlike the first charter in 1875 of Kansas City, that wasn't the case. They had to do everything. They would have to, every minute detail, and that was changed. Now you don't have to go through that process.
Okay, if we can, with the limited time we have, can we continue with what the
Well, really, I
process
think I've went through the whole
Oh.
process. I mean, the process is,
Couple
and I
pages.
think what this shows it, it's not a real complicated process. This is, it's, the work is with really the Charter Commission. I mean, that's where really it gets down and gets, they're under a shot clock, and a short time period, and they have a lot of work to do.
Okay, so when you've done this in the past, what's a proper way to handle this? I envision having several public meetings.
I agree.
Discuss. Maybe you could be available on Zoom or something to facilitate some of these meetings.
Sure.
But the first thing to do would be for this board to understand this more, start off with a public a study session and have open dialogue. And that will be, I would imagine, just a list of questions. What if this, what if that?
Right.
All the things that we'll think of after this
Exactly.
presentation.
Yeah, yeah, because, I mean, you're community leaders. Your citizens look to you, and so I think you need to decide if this is something that, that you as a counselor want to proceed with. Now, this discussion might prompt citizens to start a petition. You can't control that, but that rarely happens. It really comes from the community leaders when this is proceed. And then I agree 100%. You really need to have public hearings where you can vet this issue, be sure that everyone understands it, and you can learn from citizens any kind of concerns that they have, and that can be answered or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't rush. I guess don't rush into this. Let's don't put it on the April ballot. Okay. I mean, but
We have a November ballot.
Oh, November. Yeah. Well, you probably put this.
only
Well, I guess you probably could actually.
It's only
I
late
misspoke.
August.
April might be after you have your public hearings. There might be a time to put that on there. That's something you all could decide. Because
Do you have an average cost of going through this process is?
well, really, the cost is real high, except for the cost of the election, and that's going to be if you have it in April. You always have a municipal election, so the cost is not going to be that high. Probably some printing costs for the proposed charter. You don't pay the charter commissioners except if the mayor buys pizza for them or somebody, or
I think
something.
that's illegal.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, yeah. Maybe that's so. Maybe that's true. But there shouldn't be any cost to the city except for just, very, very minimal cost.
Is there any prohibition against a sitting alderman advocating either way?
No, there's not. Absolutely not. I mean, just
So we
like,
could run an entire campaign.
well, right now, what's prohibited is spending public funds to advocate for a ballot measure. But individuals, you all have the rights, you have the right to advocate for candidates and for ballot positions as an individual. That doesn't take that right away from you. So, but I would urge you to kind of talk about yourself and get a consensus before you really proceed with this, because if there's some real concerns about that, that means you're not ready for it. You need to talk some things out because that's probably going to be a fail. You're setting up for a failed process because your citizens look to you, and if you guys aren't comfortable with this, then
You're right.
they're not going to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So just, talk among yourself and give me a call. Really call some other cities. Call West Plains and Nixa and just talk with those, have them, see what their views are.
Lisa, anything else?
No, I'm sorry, I think the April ballot is due in January, so
It is.
just a time frame on that, if you're looking at that election.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the last thing we want to do is rush it, but after having several public comment sections, because the question going on the ballot isn't, are we going to be a charter city?
Right,
The question
no.
on the ballot is, do you want us to move forward?
Correct.
And let's name our committee members.
Right.
That would be the
Right.
question on the
And we're going to
ballot.
craft a charter to present to you
Yeah.
in a year.
So that may not be out of the
Yeah.
realm.
Right. And
Depending on
then,
how we can structure some public comment, how those meetings go, right, how the public
well,
feels
yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
right at this point, it's the structure of the public hearings are really in your lap. Now, if the voters approve that ballot measure and create the charter commission, then they're the ones that hold the meetings, and if they want to have public hearings, which they typically do to get input, that's in their
Yeah. At
purview.
this stage is, the public hearing, our public meetings at this stage would be to discuss and answer as many questions as we can to see if we want to move forward.
Right.
Then it's the committee that gets together and they start creating the language.
True.
Right.
Correct.
Very good.
Well, thank you so much. This is,
Richard, I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
I'm going to look forward to having you on Zoom and some of our
okay.
meetings.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, any additional comments, or we can adjourn this meeting and grab a quick bite? Do I have a motion to adjourn the study session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.